Okay, we're going to get started right now. Just flipped over to 3:05. So, hello. Um, my name's Eli. I'm up here. Um, and I have been involved with Black and Pink for a really long time. So I'm really excited to talk to you all about our Pen Pal program today. Before Riley and I introduce ourselves, just a couple things to get you oriented. There is captioning available. If you go down to the bottom of your Zoom screen, where it says Q&A and chat and participants, there should be a button that says CC for live transcript, and you can just turn that on or off if it's distracting to you. And we also, there's that Q&A option down there at the bottom. Feel free to ask us questions throughout and we'll try to answer them as we can, and we'll save some up for the end. There'll be plenty of times for questions after. So thank you all for coming to our kind of Pen Pal 101 orientation training mashup. And Riley, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Riley. I use they, them pronouns. If there is anyone here who is not able to see me, I am a white person who's not, agender, wearing a red hoodie and a black choker and a blue beanie with short hair. And I have been with Black and Pink for 3-4 years. I don't know, I've lost track of time, but for a while. And I have been particularly helping with our pen pal trainings. I have 3 pen pals at the moment, and I've had a variety during my time with Black and Pink. I also assist with our drop-ins, which are Sundays from 3 to 4. And we have a variety of things that we do in that space, including meeting up about our pen pals and other things, and like learning together. And I also work in housing advocacy. I could go on for a while, but I'm going to stop it there, and I'll pass it back to Eli.
All right, thank you. So as I said, my name is Eli. My pronouns are they, them. I am a white person with a brown beard and mustache, clear glasses. I'm like looking at myself right now, and black eyeliner. And I'm wearing a shirt that says "No New Jails" from our comrades at Families for Justice as Healing, or FJA. And I just want to remind anyone again who's just coming in that we have auto captions available at the bottom of the Zoom box. Hit CC to turn them on. And my involvement with Black and Pink, I've been involved since about 2012. I've been writing my pen pal for about 7.5 years, and he's my brother. So I found the Pen Pal program really life-changing. You might just find it like interesting and fun, and hopefully not too hard. But I'm just a huge advocate for it. So let's jump in.
So this is our agenda for the day. We did not anticipate having as many attendees as we do, and we're so happy to have you. And we may not be able to do this last portion, but we'll see how we go. And so I'm actually going to bounce it immediately back to Eli for, oh wait, actually, I'm so sorry, I forgot about the second slide. Again, feel free to use the Q&A button on the bottom of your Zoom screen if you have any questions. But if you'll see here, these are some of the common questions that we get that we will definitely be going through. Potentially if we know answers coming up, we may not answer it right away in the Q&A, but just know if there's anything lingering that we do not cover, we will answer it at the end. And now I'll pass it back to Eli.
Okay. So I want to tell you a little bit before we get started about Black and Pink Massachusetts. We were founded in 2005 in a Massachusetts federal prison at a federal medical center. It's called FMC Devens, out in Air, Mass, which is a route to kind of near the, not too near the New Hampshire border, but it's a ways out there, and you see on your screen the very first two pen pals. That's Jason on the left and Douglas on the right. Um, they were our first ever pen pals because Jason got out of that time in prison and he did something that is unusual, which is that he kept in contact with the people that he left behind. And they kept in contact with him. So Douglas, our very first pen pal, soon expanded until Jason had way too many people that he was trying to keep up with, and all of his friends had pen pals, and it became Black and Pink. Um, since then, we've grown and changed and just gone through so many permutations. But one thing to know is that we became a national 501c3 in 2017, and we made the move from here in Boston, where we were founded, to Omaha, Nebraska, which is where the ED of Black and Pink Inc. Is situated, and she felt like it was really important to bring something queer and radical out to the homeland. So we are now Black and Pink Massachusetts instead of Black and Pink Boston. We are a new independent org from Black and Pink Inc. And the reason is just that we wanted to concentrate on what is happening here around us and have local leadership and local connections that you just can't have if you're a big national organization. So our focus is really on what's happening here, and that's why we focus on getting pen pals who live in the state of Massachusetts. Okay, some of the more very common questions. Do I have to be LGBTQ or living with HIV? Absolutely not. We welcome people of any background, any experience, any identities. It is helpful sometimes when you share an identity with your pen pal. There's sorts of things like, um, you just connect better on. And you don't need to live in Massachusetts, but we would really, really like if you did. And one of the reasons for that is just my pen pal, who's my brother, Jerry, is in the federal system, and he's been moved all over the place and always more than 500 miles away. It's not realistic for me to ever visit him. And we really hope that your pen pal relationship is going to grow and blossom, and maybe you're going to want to come someday and visit your pen pal. In addition, there's a lot of local problems with that we really people who are based in Massachusetts responding to what's going on the ground. And then, kind of the point of why we're here. Why would you write to someone who's incarcerated? And there are a lot of reasons. One of them is that, for LGBTQ people and people living with HIV, it's sometimes they'll describe it to me as it being like they died. Sometimes when people come out, they just lose everyone. And sometimes when people go into the system, they lose everyone again. So people who are incarcerated are sometimes very alienated from their families of origin, especially we found if they are queer. And it's so important for the kind of humanizing work, for abolition, for if you think that maybe there's something that's not right going on with the police, to get involved behind the scenes and be talking to people who are directly affected by these things. It's not just headlines, it is real people living in real terrible situations. And we really stress this because something magical happens when they do mail call, which isn't really happening right now because people are locked in their cells pretty much 24/7 as a COVID-19 measure, which is ridiculous. But what happens during mail call is they call out the names of the people who have mail. And that might not sound like much, But you know how it feels when you get something in mail and you're like, oh my gosh, what is it? It's magnified by 1,000 when it's your pen pal or someone new or just another connection. And something else that happens at mail call is that people see that you're receiving mail. The guards see that you're receiving mail. People who might want to hassle you see that you're receiving mail. And it helps to affirm to them and to the person on the inside that they have community and someone is going to know and care if something happens to them. And that could be a real preservation of their health and well-being and the mental health and well-being of somebody who's incarcerated. Um, and then to kind of switch tracks real fast, another very basic question that we get a lot is how often should I write? And we ask that you write once or twice a month, but it's so much more important that you come up with not rules, that you come up with ideas and agreements with your pen pal about how often you're going to be communicating, because it sucks when you feel like somebody forgot about you, and time in prison can go really differently. Uh, so it can feel like it's been forever since you got your last letter, and it can hurt, and it can drive you crazy. So you really want to make some ground rules about how often you're going to write and stick to them, because when you get that mail call consistently, it really drives the message home that you're important. And if we go to the next slide, I'm going to keep talking for a while. Okay. A common question that we get a lot is about Googling. And we want privacy for you as well as for your pen pal. So these next couple things kind of go together. I'm going to take a sip 1 second. We really don't want you to Google your pen pal for a variety of reasons. When you Google somebody before a date, you might find some information that you're like, ooh, I don't like that. And it could be a loss of a real connection. And when you're Googling somebody who's in prison, you may find the articles about the state's case against them, the entire Commonwealth of Massachusetts against this one person, telling you about some of the worst things they ever did or didn't do. In some detail and with no compassion for the person that they're talking about. So you're going to get the worst version of them from people who have an interest in telling you the worst version of that person. And we want to set you up for a good connection. People also are concerned about their own privacy, which often comes up in the form of wondering about using their own return address. Again, I would say it's good for your connection to your pen pal to use your real address. You know exactly where they live. Like, you know the city, you know the unit, you know sometimes their cell number, and if they sleep on the top or bottom bunk. You can know some really detailed information about exactly where that person is at all times. And for me, it just seems fair to share your return address. That said, there's some there's some good reasons not to want to do it. Maybe you're a semi-public figure and you don't want to use your home address. Maybe there are people you're living with that it wouldn't be safe for you to receive mail from someone in prison. There are perfectly good reasons, and you could use something like an office or work address if it would be okay with your work environment. You could ask a friend. And if you're in a real pinch, you can use the black and pink P.O. box, and we'll take a picture of your letter and send it on to you. When you are writing somebody who's in prison who's queer, there might not be an understanding of their gender that's articulated to the DOC. So when we address the envelope, you're forced to use their government name, the name that the government knows them by. And that is often, because we have a lot of trans members, different than the name that they prefer and feel good about. So when you address the name on the envelope and you have to detonate someone, is what it's called when you use the name that they were given at birth that they no longer identify with. So sometimes you have to detonate a person on the envelope, and then we encourage you to use the name that they've articulated to us to address them on the inside of the letter. I think my cat might be making an appearance in a second. Yep, there she goes. Sorry. And then just some basic notes on restrictions for when you're writing your first letter, which we're going to go into in a little detail at the end. There are lots of new rules that are pending right now. And you can see that there's going to be a hearing on Friday the 29th at 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. We'll give you more information about it, but they're trying to do a lot of things that would restrict your freedom as a pen pal to talk freely with your pen pal, and for them to receive legal mail that hasn't been tampered with, all sorts of things. So for right now, the best way when you're writing your first letter to make sure that it gets there is to use plain white paper with lines, or computer paper. It's okay to print it off your computer, your letter off your computer. White paper with black ink and a white envelope, preferably not a security envelope, the ones with the blue on the inside. Sometimes they'll say that anything with color on it can bring in drugs. Is always their big claim, that there is some sort of possibility of bringing drugs into the prison. And I want to state for the record, it is guards and it is people employed by the prison and sometimes volunteers that bring the majority of contraband, especially drugs, into prison. So when we hear new mail rules, it's important to know that part of what they're doing is alienating our people from us. They're taking away what it means to have a child, your child, draw something on construction paper with markers and glue and put stickers on it and all of those things that, you know, are hallmarks of your child's card or letter, are the way that a 2-year-old can articulate themselves and to say, I love you, Mom. All of those are contraband. And we really believe that that is so damaging. And the hearing will be open to the public. In addition, we're having a testimony writing party on the 26th. And like I said, I'll give you more information on that at the end. And let's go to the next slide.
All right, so I'm going to take over here. I did just want to note, because we had a few questions about it, that the recording will be shared with everyone who's attending. We should be recording right now. And I noticed that at least one person mentioned having some audio challenges. I think Eli and I can hear each other, so I don't know if that's on us or on some other folks' computers, but we are hoping to, or we will be sending a recording, and hopefully the audio will be better. If there is anything you miss that you specifically want us to answer, let me know, or let us know, and we can repeat anything. Great, and then I'm also seeing some questions in the chat that we will definitely answer at the end. So again, keep putting them in if you need to. So now we're going to talk about my favorite topic, which is setting boundaries with your pen pal and having your pen pal set boundaries with you. So as we said, you know, a relationship with someone who is incarcerated is in many ways very unique, but also in many ways very similar to any other relationship that you are building with someone. So a lot of the questions that we get most frequently about a variety of topics, in which we'll go into some of them, but in a moment. But a lot of the questions, the answer is like, it depends. So if you're wondering, can I talk about this with my pen pal? Should I have this kind of conversation. Is it important for me to do X, Y, and Z? It really depends on what kind of relationship you are setting. So we have a lot of people who are looking for a friendship, and maybe you want to be, a friend with them. And so think about someone in your life in the free world who has that similar level of relationship with you. What would you be okay with them? What would you want to talk about? What would you want to do with them? What would you not want to do? We have some pen pals who are looking for a sexual or romantic relationship. If that's something that you're interested in, what boundaries would you set for that with someone in the free world? Some people are just looking for, someone who can keep them posted on what's going on out here or advocate for them if something's coming up. And again, what would you do for someone in that situation? So really, like a lot of the main questions we get, it is entirely up to you and up to the pen pal. And what we really want to, uplift, especially when we were talking before about like how often should you write, it is really critical that communication is ongoing, clear, and open to malleability and change, because you want to make sure that both of you are engaging in communication that feels safe and comfortable and enjoyable for both of you. You definitely, we in the free world have a lot of power and privilege over those we're writing. And we're writing people that we don't know and that we only get to see whatever they tell us, for their profile. Like we get to see whatever they put on the bio. So we don't know them yet. And so it's really important in both directions that the boundaries are being set that you are both comfortable with, that you're both keeping up to, and that you're holding each other accountable if you cross them. Again, we're going to go into some specific topics that a lot of people are unsure about. But one thing that's really important is that those of us at Black and Pink Massachusetts, we care very much about everyone being safe and everyone having a good relationship. And so if there's ever a time where you are trying to enforce a boundary and your pen pal maybe isn't understanding that or isn't respecting it or anything like that, which occasionally happens. We're all human, and humans have different understandings of relationship building. You're always welcome to reach out to us for support, or if it becomes overwhelming, you're always welcome to step away, and we can work with making sure that that pen pal is still having a connection, but maybe it's just not a good fit with you, and that's totally okay. So a couple of like the more complex kind of boundary setting that is that a lot of people try and like grapple with. So we'll start with like politics. So political differences, very common. Black and Pink Massachusetts is an abolitionist organization. All of our incarcerated members are LGBTQIA+ and or living with HIV. And that doesn't mean that we can assume that their politics are any such way. And that's okay. We're here to support them for whatever they need. And that is, we have our like organizational principles, and you might have your own principles. You might not be an abolitionist. You might not be left of center. You might not be any of those things, and that's totally fine. But just, understanding when you go in that you can't assume to understand that they'll be on the same page as you with certain conversations if you're going in that route. Now, I brought this one up specifically because I did have a pen pal relationship for a time with someone who their kind of understanding of and discussions of identities that were politicized was very much not in line with my own morals and values. And we had a conversation around it where I was finding it very uncomfortable to talk to them because kind of their worldviews were such that were harmful to people that actually were very important to me. And so eventually I had to end the relationship because it was one that I was not comfortable continuing. But in that way, in ending that relationship, I was making sure that it was very clear why it was ending, that they knew they could still reach out for supports to anyone at Black and Pink if need be. I knew that they had other family and friends that they were able to interact with, so they weren't being cut off completely from the outside world. And it was very much like this is what I would do to anyone else who I was interacting with in this situation. So that's one thing that comes up a lot. We also mentioned really briefly political censorship. So there are some people who are incarcerated. It could be argued that many people who are incarcerated for political reasons. And so it is possible that conversing with them about certain topics could put them at risk of an escalated violence, escalated censorship. So for example, if someone is incarcerated for talking about, or if someone who is incarcerated is trying to talk about violence that's happening inside and they're caught giving that information, they may be put into solitary confinement. If they are talking about their trans identity and how they're getting denied certain care, they may be put into solitary. During this COVID crisis, we've had people who have been scared to communicate about what's going on because they're afraid of escalated punishment. So it's always best to err on the side of whatever boundary your pen pal is setting around certain topics to make sure that for some of them, they want to take the risk because they want to make sure that we know what's going on so that we can step in. And for some, they really don't. So before getting into, more of the intense topics, just be mindful that depending on what you say and how you say it, it could have a negative impact. And it's not your fault, and it's not their fault, it's the system's fault, but you just want to make sure that you're both comfortable with the level in which you're communicating. I do have one friend who sometimes he'll say things just so blatantly that I'm like, are you sure you want to be saying that on the phone surrounded by others? I'm happy to hear it. I love talking about this, but I just want to make sure you're okay. And then I have another friend who is very secretive, very specific in how she talks. Because again, she's had a lot of repercussions. And that leads to the next part, which is language around queerness and identity specifically. A lot of the people who a lot of our members have been incarcerated for a long time. It could be decades. Many haven't had interactions with the outside world in a long time. Maybe they've been in solitary for several years. There's a lot of reasons why they might not have access to the same information that we do. And prison culture is very different from free world culture in a lot of ways. And the ideas around queerness and gender identity are a little bit different just because of prison culture. So you may see someone, if you are someone who identifies as somewhere on the LGBTQIA spectrum, you may find that people are using language that we might not use or have an understanding of queerness or transness or, sexuality that we no longer have or we're adapting. And it's very likely that it is not a, intentional attempt to be homophobic or transphobic. It could just be that's the language they have, that's the information that they have. For example, something that threw me off for a while that I've gotten used to is there's a lot of members that have written from various places across the country who may be cis men and say that they're bisexual because they're interested in cis and trans women. And we understand that cis and trans women are women, and so if you're only attracted to women and you're a man, you're straight, or at least that's how we would understand it. But that inside the prison is very much just the language that's used. So again, you may come across these things, and we definitely invite you to be open as much as you're comfortable with in providing education and information. and just want you to be prepared for that possibility and to recognize that, you know, things are just a little bit different, and that's okay. And we're not going to tell someone what they should or shouldn't identify with. And again, if you're having someone who is being what you feel is disrespectful to your identity or your language that you use, feel free to reach out to us if needed, and we can assist with just having a conversation and helping facilitate that. Another thing that comes up a lot is we have a lot of members who, again, without having any connection to the outside world, they are looking for money and financial support because when you're incarcerated, you don't get access to the same kinds of essentials that we do. If you want even just paper and a stamp, that can cost you like over $1, or it can be like up to $2, and you might be getting less than $1 a day if you're lucky enough to have a job inside where they're getting paid little, if anything. During the COVID crisis, people have had to buy their own hand sanitizer and their own soap. We also know that there's prisons in Massachusetts that have lead in their water. So buying water bottles costs a lot of money. And if you don't have someone who can provide financial support for you, you are, kind of screwed, pardon my French, but like you're really put in a very disadvantageous position. And you, as someone in the free world, may not be someone who has the ability to support someone financially, or may not be comfortable doing that for whatever reason. So we were really blessed to be able to raise funds to do a Canteen Drop this year, 2 actually, for our inside members, three, oh my goodness, where we just gave a lump sum to every single one of our members and put it in their canteen, which is the fund, like the kind of bank account that they have. And so we were able to support them all. But we do have the opportunity in a lot of spaces. We do have the opportunity sometimes to raise funds for specific people. So if someone is reaching out asking for financial support that you can't provide, definitely be honest about it, but also feel free to reach out and maybe we can raise some funds for them. If they're continuing to pressure you or that feels like a boundary that they're crossing, again, feel free to reach out to us. But just remember, it's not like a lot of like if you go on the websites to actually give someone money, the language is really messed up. Like I've donated money to some of my friends before, and it'll say things like, they're just trying to use you, and like, please know that if you're a pen pal, they're probably just trying to scam you, which isn't true. They have needs that they need met, and this is one way to do that. But don't feel like you have to shell out something you don't have. But we're not going to discourage you or encourage you to send money. That's entirely up to you and your pen pal. Sex and dating. Again, some of our pen pals are looking for sexual or romantic relationships. If you want to pursue that, please go ahead, by all means. You also may find that because folks just don't have someone to talk to about personal things that are happening for them, about relationships, especially if it's around sexuality or gender identity, sexuality or gender identity, which they may have to hide for fear of violence inside if they're open about it. They may just want to confide in someone. If that's something you're okay with, do that. If it's something you're not okay with, it's good to set that boundary if you start to notice it being like creeped on. That as in like it's creeping closer, not you being creeped on. Because obviously we don't want you to be uncomfortable in talking about things you don't want to talk about. But again, entirely up to you to have the conversation you want. And you'll see that all these answers are kind of the same, but these are the things that come up a lot that are particularly hot topics for people. Calling and visiting. I love talking to my friends on the phone. I am so excited to visit one of my new friends when we're allowed to visit people again. I don't like visiting because being in the prison sucks, and going through all the steps to get there sucks, but like seeing them is beautiful and wonderful, and being able to hold them and talk with them without any interruption or without worrying about the phone call getting cut off at 20 minutes is wonderful. And it's really important to be in space with them and to really engage with them if you want. But don't do anything you don't want to. So again, we highly encourage you to call, to visit. Just know that with phone calls, it costs money. That again, usually your pen pal might not have, depending on the state. Either they put money on the line or you do. I don't exactly know how it works in Massachusetts, but Eli might be able to hop in on that momentarily. So if you don't have the funds, but you do want to call them, maybe reach out to Black and Pink Massachusetts, and if we have extra funds, we could potentially support, or we could rally around, or like, you know, we have a Pen Pal support Facebook network. But, you know, I think it is a really important thing. I talk to literally all of my friends on the phone. I love it. I love hearing their voice. I love knowing they're okay. Letters take a while. Seeing them is great. And we encourage it if you want to. And that's something you can always change. If you decide early on you don't want to do that, but then later you are interested, then let them know. And we can help you get all that set up if you need support, because you have to like register your number, you have to register a bunch of stuff. So if you're really lost in how to do that, feel free to reach out, and one of our volunteers can help with that. And then the final two, this one's a little bit difficult, the personal connection to specific crimes. So I think this was the one I was going to pump back to you, Eli, because you're really good at talking through this. But I'll just really quickly touch on the Pen Pal Is Unsafe. If your pen pal says that they're in an unsafe situation, we definitely ask you to ask them first what they want you to do about it, whether it's just listen or whether it's call the, you know, superintendent at the prison, or it's, you know, make a big stink out here, which we're more than happy to do. We do it all the time for people who are expressing like really unsafe situations. We really try and rally around helping them out, but we always need to deflect to what the pen pal wants, because we don't know how our actions could potentially positively or accidentally negatively impact them. So now I'm going to bounce it back to Eli.
Okay, I'm gonna try holding my mic up and see if that helps with the audio a little bit. I just want to add, for calling and visiting, I hate talking on the phone like so much. And when Securus comes up on my phone, I'm like, ugh. And then I pick it up and I have a really good conversation with someone that I wouldn't get to really communicate with in anything resembling real time otherwise. So for me, it works out. So there's a question that I think is worth addressing now. What's a reasonable monthly amount to give to a pen pal? We want to make sure relationships do not focus on donating money in a pen pal program for women at Framingham. I think that's a great question. Keep in mind that a book of stamps is $11, and a pad of paper might be $2. A pen might be, 30 cents. I think that $15 to $20 is a good amount to get somebody started. As a pen pal, that's a great way of like being like, hey, this is our starting package. I can't support you very much after this, but I want to make sure that you're always able to reply to my mail when you want. And then from there, it's up to you. I just started putting about $20 on my pen pal's phone every month, and for me, that's what I can do and what seems reasonable, but it may be different for you. So, sorry, that was just one of the questions over there. I wanted to make sure we got to it. And just so you know, we're going to take a bio break after this question. For a personal connection to specific crimes, it's really difficult. I would assume that a lot of us in this room are LGBTQ, and I would assume that a lot of us in this room are women, because that's how we tend to skew a little. And I would guess that that means a lot of us have experienced sexual violence in particular, or other kinds of interpersonal violence. And in Massachusetts, there's one prison that is devoted to people who have sexual offenses as part of their conviction, and that's the Massachusetts Treatment Center. It can be really hard when you first hear that somebody is in jail for a sex crime. my pen pal's in jail for a sex crime, and he did it. And as a person who has been affected by sexual violence, that was hard to hear at first. And for a while, I wasn't sure about the connection, because that made me feel like maybe I couldn't trust him. Something that I try to keep in mind is he is in prison. He's far away. He can't physically hurt me, and he's appropriate in his letters. I don't feel like he's crossing any of my boundaries. Um, so for me, I try to focus on the person, and this kind of goes back to Googling. You don't want to hear the worst version of someone that you're trying to form a relationship with. And for many people, their connection to a crime is through violence of a physical nature, non sexual nature. We have pen pals who have been shot. We have pen pals who've experienced all sorts of terrible violence, but they're able to make a connection with the folks inside around that. And a lot of people don't want to discuss their conviction at all, because it's a very personal and very painful, often, thing. But I think that that's a really good boundary to respect. And it may come to a time when you know someone well enough to ask, like, I think I'm ready to hear about it. Are you ready to tell me? Um, and that, I think, is a real show of trust and faith if somebody's able to do that. So never feel like you have to talk to someone if they're making you uncomfortable. Never feel like you have to talk to people that you are having a hard time with or don't feel safe around because you're trying to be the model abolitionist. There are some people who just don't interact appropriately. And one of the ways that we can hold them responsible is if you talk to Black and Pink Massachusetts, we can correspond with them and try to figure out how they can be appropriate in the future. Um, and with that said, we just kind of dumped something big on you. We went through a lot of questions kind of fast. Um, I'd like to just address the ones that are in our Q&A, and then we'll take a quick break for folks to run to the bathroom or do whatever it is you need to do. Um, there's a question about what to include in your first letter, and we're actually going to look at a sample first letter at the end of the presentation and kind of go through some components that you might want to include in your first letter. There's also a question, is there an age requirement for being a pen pal? People need to be 18 plus, just because for some people who are incarcerated, they aren't allowed to have contact with minors. And we just never want to put our inside members in any kind of position where they could end up in trouble. And what kind of commonalities can I look for having in my pen pal? Gender, but also things like religion and location. When we come back from our 5-minute break, we're going to take a look at the database, and you'll see how you can sort things and how you can look at different identities that people might have. And that should hopefully get you oriented to it. Outside and inside pen pals are matched based on the outside person looking at the database that we're going to look at and deciding, like, yes, this is the person I would like to talk to. So it is, let me check the time, 3:48. Let's say be back at 3:55. Does that sound good? Okay,
Yeah.
3:55, and we'll take a break ourselves, I think.
Yeah. Eli, do you have any tunes by any chance? I know you and Ruckus are usually good with the music.
I know. I always, and feel free to walk away as we're chatting. I always do Tracy Chapman, but the last time I did it, we tried to put it on Facebook. We got like a
Oh
they auto
no.
yeah, they auto detected that it was talking about revolution,
Oh
and
no.
I couldn't upload it. So no
Okay.
music. We're gonna sit here in silence
Sorry,
for
y'all.
5 minutes. Okay,
See y'all
3:55,
soon.
y'all. Thank you. Okay, once again, we're just taking a break until 3:55 to give everyone a chance to do some stretching or do whatever they need to do. When we come back, we're going to be talking about our pen pal. Hey, we have a couple questions in the chat that I'll just take. How long is the training? We'll be talking for about another half an hour or so, and then we'll have time for y'all to ask questions that haven't been addressed. And someone's going to have to step away, but absolutely, we're so happy to share any information that we can that's going to help you out. And the next thing that we're going to be doing is how we actually match pen pals. And then for folks who are working behind the scenes trying to get a pen pal program started, because I know there's actually a few folks here today who are working on that, I'll be available to go into a breakout room with you, and we'll just kind of use that time to chat. Okay, we will be back in just one more minute at 3:55. So please finish up whatever you at 3:55. Sorry, and just finish up whatever you're doing and get back and get ready. Okay, so it's 3:55. We're going to jump back in, and we are going to be doing a look at our quote unquote database. Um, we just became an independent org on December 1st of last year, and we haven't yet built our custom database that we need in order to keep track of our pen pals. So for right now, we're using a slightly complicated spreadsheet system. But what it means is that you can take a look at our list of active pen pals, available pen pals, which is anyone who has between 0 and 2 people writing them right now. And you can, let's take a look. Okay, so this is the first thing you're going to see, other than my million tabs. Just a reminder that this is personal information about people who are incarcerated, and we don't give their last name out of respect for them. We don't give their prisoner number out of respect for them, but we still give personal information that they've asked us to share. So just be respectful. Let's take a look at the sheet by going to available members down here at the bottom of the screen. All right. Sorry, I gotta close some things so that I can see what I'm doing. Okay, so this is our spreadsheet of all of our available members. Up here, you'll see the various things that we filter by, and you'll also see that not everyone has this information. Like up at the top of the very first slide, Jose hasn't provided us with any information at all, just wrote us and said, hey, I'm interested in being a pen pal, and we haven't heard further from him yet or them yet. But we have heard from Maddie, who has a really nice description of, we ask people to talk about something that they're good at, something that they like about themselves, because sometimes people are taught to put their worst foot forward, but we want people to talk about what's great about them and what makes them a fun pen pal. So they'll also tell you if they've filled out our entire pen pal sheet. I wish that I had one next to me. I usually do. You'll find all kinds of other information about them, like what kind of pen pal they're looking for. And in addition, pen pal types, which you'll see is mostly blank because we didn't get that information when we transferred our database. So we're filling it in now. You'll see if they're looking for friendship, romantic, sexual, and if they want to talk about activism, because not everybody does. And we also have a really important column, our do not out column, which is where people will articulate to us that for whatever reason they can't be out about their identity, and you may want to check in, okay, what names do I use for you when I write to you? Or what kind of things do you want me to not talk about? Which is, you know, a good question to ask regardless. There's the gender that they write down for us, and then there's the gender that we use to sort. So when you're trying to find someone, maybe you're thinking about, okay, I want someone who's the same gender as I am. Oh, and if you're me, that's quite a Pandora's box. But you're like, I definitely want someone with a profile. So what I did to open this up is click on the little triangle next to gender for sort. And if you think, okay, I really want someone with a profile at least, you can click next to blanks to remove the check, and that will take out anyone who hasn't responded to this particular question. If you want to narrow it down further, and you don't want to talk to a cis man for sure, and you're not really interested in talking to, let's say, you don't want to talk to cis people, we can sort this for anyone who's identified themselves as trans, questioning, or anything else. And then you can do the same thing with the other columns. So right now I'm leaving my sort in column J that says that I want someone who is not cisgender, in other words, doesn't identify with the gender that was assigned to them at birth. And I also want to talk to someone who, let's see, oh, I'm using the wrong column, somebody who is bisexual. So I'm going to go to clear and take out everybody. And then I'm going to click bisexual to put them back in. I'm sorry if you know how to use a spreadsheet fairly good depth, but I just want to make sure that people know how to do this. And since I have two different sorts, and you can see that by this little like green icon up here, um, I pulled up everyone who's questioning their gender and a trans woman and is bisexual. So now I have three people that I might be like particularly interested in writing. And I can read their bios now. I can read about what they're looking for in a person. Some people have even more information, like a photo or a drawing of themselves. It'll tell you if they need you to print the letters, meaning to like print them out of the computer because they have trouble reading handwriting, for example, and if they need large print. Um, One of the least, the columns that's least likely to be up to date is, are they in solitary? And that's because obviously people go in and out of solitary all the time. Right now, I would say essentially everybody in Massachusetts is in solitary. They're on lockdown, and it's solitary even if you have a roommate. When you can't leave your cell in restrictive housing for essentially 23 hours a day, 7 days a week, um, I would call that solitary, but there's also like a separate part of the prison that you go to for solitary, obviously. And then the age column also might be out of date because we only have the information that people provide us with. We don't go looking for any other information. It means that maybe somebody identifies different now, maybe somebody uses different words to talk about their experiences. Maybe somebody's like, okay, so I said that Bruce Springsteen was my favorite, but actually now I've been listening to a lot of Kesha and I'm just like feeling it. So things change obviously over time. And you just want to keep in mind that it might not be the exact same person that you thought you were writing, but hopefully you'll still have a good connection. So I've read Eric, and other than thinking that he's wrong about dumping Bruce Springsteen, I think he's a great match. So over here, I'm just going to note she uses she, her pronouns. The name that we have for her is Eric, so that's what I'm going to call her. And I'm going to note her black and pink pen pal number in that first column. And then back here, go to the first tab where it kind of reminds you all of the logistical stuff. And over here explains what I did to filter. It also gives you the link that you're going to need to register your pen pal. Let's open that up so you can see what that is like. Starts with a ton of resources, including a webinar that we did, Riley and I did last fall. And depending on the audio quality, we might replace it with this one. It'll ask for some information about you, and then it'll ask for that pen pal number, and then the name of that person just to confirm that we are looking at the right person. And then it asks if you want to sign up for a new mailing list. Please do. It's going to be eventually how we use all of our communication, and it just helps us get a sense of who we're writing to. And let me, oh, I lost my tab. And it will also just let us get in touch with you if there are changes to your pen pal information as well. And you can choose if you're interested in our volunteer list serve. On the next slide, I didn't do everything. I'm gonna get this email later and be like, what is this? If you're interested in volunteering, it'll ask you to give us a little bit more information about special skills you might have. Think big about what your special skills are. Special skills aren't just things that you would put on a traditional resume. They're things like, I make a killer mac and cheese. They're things like, I know how to, or I can make a lot of copies at work. That's really useful for us. If you, for example, speak Spanish and are comfortable translating for us, that's a really great asset. There's all sorts of skills that you have that you could contribute if you have the time and energy to do so. And then on the last page of the sign up for your pen pal, we ask totally optional information, including your gender, if you identify as trans, what your sexuality is, what race you identify with, you can include ethnicity as well. And if you have a faith, we're curious about it, because faith is how a lot of our members get through their incarceration, but certainly not all. And we have a lot of wicked members too. So if you're interested in matching along religious lines, you can do so by filtering that pen pal information um, in the spreadsheet. We're asking just a little bit more information about who you are, what some of your experiences are, and then anything else you want us to know. And there's no right or wrong answers. We're just kind of checking in to see where you are and where we are. All right. And when our database does come online, you may be emailed and asked to sign up for a new system, and please just do so. That'll also help us keep in connection if there are any important changes with your pen pal, like if they get transferred, or like fingers crossed they get out early and unexpectedly, which does happen sometimes. Okay. I'm gonna stop screen share because I don't know how to do that.
Okay, so we have a few questions that have come up. Two are technical questions. So one is saying, do we need to have editing access to use the sort function? I'm currently accessing the document and it's marked view only, and I do not see the triangles that I can view on your screen share. Is that something? I don't remember.
I was not aware of that, and I can try working on it to see if we can make that editable. That's a great question, though, and if you want to email me directly, I can give you access so you can play around with those things. My email is eli@blackandpinkma.org, and you'll see that again at the end.
Another question about the filtering is, can we filter based on what kind of relationship someone is seeking? The answer to that is yes, except we don't have that information right now. So yes, there is usually an option where people can say the types of relationships they're interested in, but when the transfer of data happened, we lost that information. So if we get it, we'll update it. But if you look in people's bios, which I know is a little bit more tedious potentially, but a lot of times they will say in the bio what they're looking for. And then for some of the other questions, if they say do not out, should we avoid talking about queer stuff? Not necessarily. And you'll see in the first letter a way that we, like in the first letter example, a way that we brought it up without outing the person. But you know, if for example you identify as queer, it might be helpful to just mention that, but then not ask them any questions or make any assumptions about them, and let them kind of lead the conversation. It's more, actually, Eli, do you want to add anything to that? Because I have some thoughts, but you might have other thoughts.
No, I think that's good. I would just avoid saying something like in the first letter, like, I wanted to talk to you because I know that you're a trans woman. You could say something like, I'm interested in talking about trans issues. That might be a little coded way of getting it in there. Just in your first letter, if you say that you got their information from Black and Pink, that'll be a signal about what you're interested in. And there's also a question in the Q&A asking, like, are there people who want to talk to someone who are straight and cisgender? Absolutely. We want to, our members want to talk to anyone who will talk to them, to be honest, a lot of the time. And great friendships can come out of that. And sometimes, you know, not so great connections can come out of it too. But that's just kind of, you know, the roll of the dice. But there's definitely people looking to correspond with people of any identity, any background, any experiences. And the way that we reach people in prison is mostly word of mouth. And then we're also included in some publications that go out en masse to prisoners, both as a resource guide and in like prisoner legal news, which is like a big addendum of stuff that goes out to prisoners. We're listed in there, but it's mostly word of mouth.
As for the spreadsheet link, we're going to send it in a follow-up email to everyone who registered.
I'm not sure if we have it in Bridgewater State Hospital, which was one of the questions. Off the top of my head, I would say no, we don't. But if you're interested in corresponding with somebody there, you can shoot me an email. My email will be the last slide that I'll, along with Riley's, and we can take a look at our master information.
All right, so do you want to screen share again for the sample first letter, or do we want to just send that? I'm sorry, figuring things out as we go along in this moment. Oh wait, there's this whole other, okay. So again, we do have a sample first letter that we'll get to momentarily, but I just realized that other slide we didn't go through yet. Sorry, it's late on a Sunday. My brain is going somewhere else now. So here's just a couple of do's and don'ts. Big don't, number one, especially in the first letter, but never without establishing that, that kind of comfortable relationship first. Don't ask what they're in for, and don't Google what they're in for, and don't make assumptions about what they're in for. It is a huge violation of their privacy, an immediate way to make them feel guilty or shameful or uncomfortable in any way. So just don't. Please don't. Also, don't pity their situation. I remember feeling when I wrote my very first letter that I had to say something to the effect of like, oh, I'm so sorry. This must be so difficult for you. I want to work with you because, or, I want to write to you because I feel bad. It very much is putting experiences on them that we don't actually know about. It also can make you seem like a savior as opposed to a friend or a companion. And it also, if someone is in a really stressful situation, maybe they really want like an escape from that by writing to you or some other way to not have to think about it. So obviously be yourself. If they, in your correspondence, start talking about things that are challenging and you want to have, express sympathy or empathy for that, by all means, please do. Please be a good friend. And just in your first letter, it really, again, just puts things on a weird foot, weird, uncomfortable setting. Don't be vocal about their identity or status without their permission. So even if someone doesn't say, don't out me, we don't know that they're out, or we don't know that they want people to know that. So while we do suggest that you obviously address them by their chosen name, which might not be their committed name in the letter. Other than that, try not to really bring too much attention necessarily to their potential queerness or other identity. One, it may have changed. They might be using different language now. Two, they might not be out and they don't want people to see it. So as we mentioned before, there are ways to bring it up without bringing it up, but just try not to make it be like, hi, I'm writing to you as a fellow, gay man, because you and I are both gay. Get it? We're both, just don't be super bringing that up, just in case, just for people's safety. Do not take a bunch of pen pals on at the beginning. Don't do it. I thought I could do it. Everyone thinks they can do it, and you can't. There's no, while we want to make sure that everyone has a relationship, it is really hard to keep track of pen pals. In our lives out here in the free world, we have so many things going on. We have work, we have relationships, we have family, we have organizing, we have a lot of things that take our attention. And for our incarcerated members, it's just a lot more, Eli mentioned earlier, time moves differently. And so one, you don't want to be overwhelmed and not able to write people as consistently as they want to be written. Two, it's really hard to make really strong connections with so many people. I find it hard anyway. And like, it's very easy to just lose track. And every single person who has tried to take on a bunch at once, people get like fall by the wayside, and it's just not fair to them. It's not fair to you. You're putting on unnecessary pressure. They're not getting the relationships that they need. It's much better to have a few small, really strong relationships than to have a bunch of kind of superficial ones. We do write them, send birthday cards and Christmas cards and newsletters throughout the year. So even those who don't have pen pals are still getting some kind of communication. So again, we'd really rather you focus on the really strong communications than a bunch of, superficial ones. I'm repeating myself. Do be yourself. Bring your whole self into this, or whatever self you want to share. Just be you, because they're going to get to know you regardless over a long period of time, and they'll realize pretty quickly who you actually are. So just be you. We get so many people in their bios who specifically say, like, I want someone who's honest. I want someone who isn't fake. It's very important. So just be yourself. And this one's more technical. Verify their address. So there's a couple different websites where we're all incarcerated folks, their current location is updated like immediately. If they transfer, it's updated there. We do our best in our database to keep it up to date as frequently as possible. And sometimes people are transferred very quickly. Sometimes we just miss because we don't have enough volunteers to check, whatever it is. So we'll elaborate in our follow-up email, but there's 3 different websites depending on where specifically they're located. The federal, the state level, or like a jail are all different. So just look them up really quick, only to find their address and make sure their location is the one that we've given you. And thankfully with these sites, they don't tell you like what they're in for. They don't tell you anything else like that. So that's the only time we'll say, like, feel free to look them up, is specifically to make sure their address is correct. Do put your return address on the letter as well as on the envelope. Especially now, everyone's getting their mail photocopied before it's handed to them, and they sometimes don't get the envelopes, or the envelopes are destroyed or something in the process. So at least for the first couple correspondences, plural correspondence, at least for the first couple, make sure that your return address is on the letter so that you know for a fact that they have it, so they know to write you back. And also make sure, again, on the letter itself, or I'm sorry, on the envelope itself, you have to address it to their committed name, which again may be different from the name that they use. Do be honest about why you're writing them, your intentions, and your commitment capacity. So right away, make sure that you're saying, like, I'm writing you because I saw this in your bio and I thought it was interesting, or I'm writing you because, whatever it was that drew you to them, so that they know that you picked them specifically. You didn't just write someone. Something about them made you want to write them. Be honest about your intentions. So it's really good in the first letter to start some of the boundary conversations. If you know going in, I can't do money, I want to have a romantic relationship, I don't want to talk about sports, you can put that all in the first letter. You can just say right away, like, these are some of my goals, expectations, and boundaries. And those are malleable and those can change, but it really helps, like, right off the get-go, to anything you can think of right away, put it down, and then add or change as that comes up. And then your commitment capacity. So what I always do in my first letter is I say, I would like to write you as often as you'd like, while also stating that I can only guarantee about once a month. So if you want to write less than that, great. If you want to write more than that, I will do my best. I know I can write you once a month, or I know I can write you once every 2 weeks, or I know I can, whatever it is. So just be very open about that at the beginning. Is there anything in the Q&A that feels, oh goodness. We'll answer these questions right after the first letter part, because some of them are really juicy and great. So we'll send this to you as well, but we wrote out a draft first letter, or example first letter that I guess we can read out loud. Eli, would you like me to read it, or do you like to? Or do we want to just? Okay.
Oh, I
Yeah.
found my unmute button.
Oh, hooray!
I couldn't find it on the share screen. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
I'll read the first page, you read the second page.
Yep. Okay.
So here's an example. Hello, John. My name is Karina, and I live in San Diego. I found your profile on Black and Pink's website while looking for a pen pal, and I thought you and I might have a lot in common. I thought it was really cool that you're into fishing and camping. I grew up in Washington State and spent my summers with my family sailing around the Puget Sound and camping near Mount Rainier. I love talking about the outdoors with people. It actually inspired me to become a camp counselor at Camp Breakout in California. I get to spend my days teaching young people about the importance of preserving wildlife and practical camping skills. I grew up with 2 older brothers and 1 younger sister. They all still live in Washington, and I like to visit them whenever I can. I prefer the warmer weather down here, but Washington will always be my home. My parents also still live in my childhood home. They're retired now and they spend their days on the sound. I live with 2 roommates and a bunch of plants. I love gardening and taking care of my plant babies. They bring me a lot of joy. People tell me I have a natural green thumb. When I'm not working, I'm drawing, catching up on Breaking Bad, or volunteering at the local LGBTQ community center. Volunteering is such a joy for me. I'm gay and it was hard growing up without supports. My family's supportive now, but didn't know how they would react, so I kept it a secret for a long time. Now I get to be myself and help youth in my community feel comfortable in their own skin.
I would love for you to tell me more about yourself. Where did you grow up? What's your favorite movie? Where is your favorite camping spot? What was the biggest fish you've ever caught? Is there anything in particular you would want me to know about you? I am really hopeful that we will connect because we seem to have a lot in common. I have never had a pen pal before, so please let me know what you are looking for in a friendship. I know I'm looking for a friend who I can talk to about shared interests, and also I'm looking to learn ways that I can support more members of my community. I really want to ensure that our incarcerated community members are being supported, especially now. Because I haven't done a lot of letter writing, I would love for you to let me know what your boundaries and expectations are, what the rules are for letters coming into your facility, and if there's anything you do or don't want me to talk about. Given my schedule, I am hoping to be able to write you at least once a month. I am happy to be someone who can advocate for you if you have any needs that need addressing. Our Black and Pink chapter has lots of resources, so if you need anything, let me know and I will reach out to them and ask. I will say that I really do not like talking about relationships, as those are touchy for me due to past experiences. I am happy to hear about yours, though. I really look forward to hearing from you. Please feel free to ask me about myself. It's always hard to describe ourselves the first time around. I cannot wait to get to know you. Best, Karina, they, them pronouns.
Okay, so there's a lot that I like about this letter, which you should know Riley wrote. Karina is not a real person, but Riley wrote a really great letter because it does a lot to introduce Karina. I feel like I know them a little, and it also makes connections to the person that Karina's writing. So asking actual questions like, where did you grow up? What is your favorite movie? My pen pal and I have known one another for like 7.5 years, like I said. And every now and then he'll still be like, what's your favorite color? And I'll be like, wow, somehow in 7 years, we never like talked about favorite colors. um, and little things like that can really just help you connect. So we're going to send you this sample letter, but I mean, it's not a template, but it's just an inspiration. Okay. I'm actually going to skip to this slide about what I mentioned before about the new mail rules that are trying to come into effect. On Friday, January 29th, there's going to be a hearing from the Department of Corrections, who oversees state prisons, and it's going to be their boss, EOPS, which is the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security. And they're basically going to be looking at new prison mail rules, and they're incredibly restrictive and incredibly, I find them dehumanizing. because it takes away so much of that contact. Like Riley mentioned, they're photocopying mail now, and they actually didn't have legal permission to be doing that yet, but they wrote it down in the rules now as if they weren't getting away with it. There's some really concerning stuff around shredding legal mail and photocopying it with photocopiers that may have memory that would allow the person to print that mail. Sometimes it could be mail about an ongoing case against the Department of Corrections. It could be something that needs to be filed by a certain time, but the DOC is trying to take away the rules for how quickly they have to process mail and get it off the unit. So on January 26th at 7 p.m., we are going to talk a little bit more about the regulations, and then we're going to give you a sample testimony script and actually work together to write our testimony. And if you don't know what to say, you feel like you don't have enough information yet, we're going to give you, we're going to also have some like one-page summaries of all of these new rules. And you can reach out to me for, if you want all the gritty details, I can get into those. But I just wanted to make sure that we made a plug for this event, because we really want to turn out a lot of responses. And if you can't be there in person, please submit written testimony. Written testimony is really important because it's something that we can go back to in like a lawsuit and say, okay, you were told about these issues, but you still wanted to photocopy and destroy legal mail. What do you think about that? So it's really great to have a paper trail with our problems about these really upsetting restrictions that also make a move to use tablets as the primary form of communication. So you would write your paper mail, they would scan it and send it to somebody's tablet. And by formalizing this tablet system, they're trying to make all paper mail contraband. Very upsetting because of that connection of, you know, touching the paper, of feeling the wrinkles from somebody's pen, of, you know, just really feeling like they're there with you as much as possible. And one more slide until we are going to do the full Q&A. These are, we're going to send this out, so don't feel like you have to scribble down all of these links and everything. But you can always contact us about any of our programs at the address you see there. Me and Riley, we're both really passionate about this. So you can email me. I'm just a volunteer. I just volunteer a lot, so I have a name email address. It doesn't really mean anything, but Riley has their personal email address up there too. We are on social media, especially Twitter. Not so great about the Facebook and Instagram, at Black and Pink MA on all of those. If you on Facebook, there is you can search for Black and Pink Massachusetts Social and Pen Pal Advice, and you'll pull up a page where you can talk about problems that maybe you're having in, you know, a semi-anonymous way. You don't want to give out your pen pal's information, and just know that potentially somebody from the Department of Corrections could read this if they wanted to be jerks, which they usually do. So just don't be too specific about who your pen pal is, but it's a great place to ask for lots of opinions instead of just mine or Riley's. And we also have an official page that you can follow. That's Black and Pink MA, facebook.com/Black and Pink MA. We have a lovely website, and then there's that link to update your email that I clicked on for you earlier. And now I think we're ready for questions.
I actually wanted to add one more thing, which was just, we haven't incorporated it on here, but I feel like we should. So I just thought of it now. So obviously we're going to answer everyone's other questions. If you went through this and you went, oh boy, I am not ready for a pen pal yet, totally fine. Again, we want people to have really strong, really unique and wonderful relationships with the people they write. And we definitely encourage you to ask us for support if it's just that you're a little bit nervous about it or anything like that. But if you're like, this is not for me right now, totally fine. We do semi-regular hopefully more regular in the future, but semi-regular virtual birthday card parties and also holiday card parties, where we just write cards to people who are inside, to all of our members. And the return addresses come back to us at our PO box, and it's a little bit more depersonalized for you, but it's still a way to build a connection with someone, or to at least let them know that they're loved and thought about. So you can always sign up for our email list anyway, and we'll put out when those are happening. And there's other ways to get involved if you're not ready to write to someone yet. So definitely it's something that, if you are not sure and you're on the fence, take your time to think about it. But we're always here. So now we can go to the questions. Sorry about that. I'm just like, don't want anyone to run away or feel bad about running, or feel bad about taking an extra time to think about it.
So yeah, definitely, it's okay to be like, I'm not ready yet, I'll come back to it later. A lot of people have that experience. So that's the end of our formal presentation. Now we're going to take a lot of questions and hopefully give you the answers. You can also, there's a function if you go to participants and then click on your name, you can raise your hand, and that will make you, I think, visible to us, and we can promote you to speaker if you want to ask yours verbally. Otherwise, you can just type it in the Q&A on the bottom of your Zoom window, right where it says Q&A. So somebody asks, would relating my experiences of long-lasting CPTSD from my time in residential treatment centers to their experience as they share them, and if they share them, in incarceration be okay? Not to make them think I understand, but to offer the support of someone who has been placed somewhere with no idea of when they'll be released. I'm also a psychiatric services survivor, and I do feel like that helps me understand a little bit what it's like to have only locked doors in front of you, and to have a line that you're not allowed to cross, and to have rules imposed on where your body goes and when. And it is a very different experience, especially a residential treatment might be a little bit different than what I tend to experience, which are hospitalization stays. But there's often a mechanism where you can get out that might not exist in any meaningful way for a person who's actually incarcerated. So I think it's fine to bring it up, and I think it's fine to make a connection, but just know that the fact that you can empathize a little doesn't mean that you know their situation.
I can answer the do's and don'ts of political education, and also I'll answer both of these questions about physically sending mail. So with the do's and don'ts of political education information, that's a little bit tricky, only insofar as it very much depends not only on the location that they're at, but the person who's checking their mail. So you're welcome to try and send any kind of political education information. For example, people can receive books, but only if they're sent via Amazon or like direct from the publisher. So you can't just like send them a package, but you can order a book sent to them. But if the DOC either has already banned it or flips through it and decides that it's too much, whatever they decide, the person might not receive it. And if you send them like printouts, which you're more than welcome to do, you can send printouts of like articles and things like that. They're going to read it and they may go, nope, too much, and they'll reject it. They will, if they reject something, my understanding is the person who's incarcerated has to pay to have the letter sent back with the reason why it was rejected. So you may just get a letter from someone that, oh, Eli, that's so funny. Michael asked the same thing. Yes, maybe we should stop recording. Sorry. So just be mindful of that your pen pal may write you and say, I don't know what you sent me.